Hello dear learner, I welcome you to the lecture 3 of week 7 and the topic of today's lecture is Equality Difference Debate. Here in this today's lecture we will cover equality and difference debates, equality within feminism with reference to the theory of liberalism, then socialist Marxist perspective. We will also study the viewpoints of the radical feminist, egalitarian claims, championing difference over equality, evolution of the difference debate, pro-woman position of the difference feminism, then difference theorist and theories, and finally the critique. And some of these topics will extend over to the next lecture of this week. So, we will try to cover some of the points which are mentioned in the concepts to be covered, and the rest will be covered in the subsequent lecture. Now, let us begin by understanding what we mean by the equality difference debate. Now, the primary dilemma within the equality versus difference debate revolved around whether feminism's goals should prioritize achieving civil, political and social equality, or if women should embrace their own distinctiveness rather than striving for equality. So, it is basically the debate between the talk for equality or the demand for equality, preserving the distinctiveness of being woman. So, what we want? Do we want to become like men, or do women should preserve their own distinctiveness and identities and try to flourish according to their own innate qualities? So, these are the two important dimensions or focal points around which the equality versus difference debate revolves. Queries emerge regarding the existence of any inherent masculine or feminine characteristics. So, we have seen that several queries have been raised by the various scholars that whether there are any inherent masculine or feminine characteristics as such, because when we are making a plea for the difference principle, then we are harping upon the two distinct type of qualities. Now, let us understand that strand of feminism or the liberal feminism which talks about or which gives more importance to equality. Now, the liberal faction of feminism has been the strongest advocate for the equality argument. If you remember the first wave feminism, we have already discussed in our previous lectures, where I have mentioned that the first wave feminism, which was also associated with the rise of liberalism or the liberal feminism, talked about equal civil and political rights for the women. So, the emphasis was on gaining status equal to that of men, so that they can also progress and achieve similarly like the men in the society. Wollstonecraft defined equality in terms of fundamental legal rights to civil liberties. According to Wollstonecraft, God endowed these rights equally to all human beings. Aside from overt physical strength, Wollstonecraft believed there was minimal so-called disparity between men and women. So, basically when we are talking about the equality aspect, or our arguments are based on the notion of equality, then we are not talking about any distinctiveness or difference, but we are harping upon the point that both men and women are having the equal qualities, equal reasoning power, equal potentialities to develop. Historically, women have pursued parity with men, frequently presenting feminism as a pursuit of sexual equality. So, we have seen various movements, especially in the earlier stages of feminism, where the movement have revolved, they have focused on the sexual equality, or the meaning is that both the sexes are equal. During the later part of the 19th century, the liberal arguments for equality emphasized the push for the expansion of suffrage rights. So, from the civil rights, now the extension has been made towards gaining the political rights, or right to vote, right to participate in politics, right to contest election and so on. According to J.S. Mill, who was a great proponent of women's rights, there should be equalization in contracts, marriage laws, property law, education and suffrage. In the 20th century, the liberal feminist advocated for equal opportunities in education, employment, pay, marriage, then property rights, political engagement and citizenship. Now, you can see that even within the liberal sphere, the equality, the question of equality or the issue of equality extended to so many different dimensions, starting from the political rights, extending to marriage rights, employment rights, in the field of the equal rights in the field of education, employment, pay and other areas. It spread and demanded for equality. Now, we have studied about the liberal perspective. Now, let us see that what socialist or Marxist perspective has to say on this issue. Even though socialist history was primarily marked by egalitarian principles, Marxists often dismissed equality as merely another bourgeois carrot, because these concepts were considered by Marx to be manufactured by the capitalist, and in the name of these concepts actually various forms of inequality were practiced. Similar to concepts of justice and rights, equality was seen as an inherent to the capitalist ideology of liberalism. So, the capitalist ideology of liberalism, as we know that capitalism is an economic extension of liberalism, and therefore, it was believed that just like the concept of justice and rights, equality was also an inherent part of the capitalist ideology. However, inequality itself was not necessarily condemned as an evil. Rather, it was considered a manifestation of deeper social issues. Inequality was perceived as a characteristic of a society divided by class struggle. So, since it is a Marxist approach, so inequality in the society was also analyzed from a class perspective or from an economic perspective. Now, we come down to the viewpoints of the radical feminist. For radicals, the concept of equality and difference held significant importance. At first, the radical feminists encompassed certain egalitarian ideas. Egalitarian ideas was based on the principle of equality. For instance, early discussions about androgyny stemmed from a type of radical egalitarianism, sometimes rooted in advancement in biological technology. Androgyny basically believes in the presence of both masculine and feminine qualities in a person. However, the subsequent dismissal of androgyny resulted in a skeptical stance towards equality, both as a principle and as a goal in politics. This period embraced and celebrated the distinction between women and men. So, now we find in the radical writings the differentiation between male and female was commonly referred to as the gender gap. Now, divergent perspectives on equality have resulted in internal rifts within feminism. Now, it is not that there is only one perspective, but there are multiple perspectives on equality. Now, the liberal feminists champion legal and political parity, facilitating women's participation in the public arena on equal footing with men, because they believe that men and women are equal and hence they should have equal civil and political rights along with women, so that they can achieve a sense of parity in the social sphere. Socialist feminists advocate for societal and economic parity, tackling issues such as wealth distribution and wage gaps. Radical feminists prioritize equality within the realm of family and personal life, concentrating on child care, domestic duties and bodily self-determination. So, therefore, we can see that whether it is the liberal feminist or the socialist feminist or the radical feminist, they all are talking about equality of women, whether in the private sphere or public sphere vis-a-vis the men. And we can see that the radical feminists are talking about equality within the realm of family or in the private sphere. They are concentrating on issues such as child care, then domestic duties and bodily self-determination or right over one's own body. Now, what have been the egalitarian claims? Egalitarian feminists hold a negative view of gender disparities, associating them with patriarchy and subjugation, because they believe that the reason or the origin of gender disparity lies in the patriarchal relations or patriarchal system in the society, and that is responsible for the subjugation of women. They see the objective of feminism as freeing women from these disparities. So, the objective of the egalitarian feminism is to emancipate women from these disparities and these bondages in the society. Now, we come to the next important point, where there are feminists who are championing the notion of difference over equality, or they are highlighting the importance of difference over equality. Different feminists oppose the concept of equality, seeing it as either misguided or undesirable. They feel that this emphasis on equality is not required, and therefore they question it and they reject it. They contend that pursuing equality suggests women's conforming to male standards, a notion they find problematic. Of course, there is a problem involved with considering equality with regards to the position of women vis-a-vis men, because when we are talking about equality, that means we are talking about becoming like men, or at least achieving the position and standards which men have achieved. So, it is a type of imitating the achievements or imitating the various standards which has been put forward by men, and they find it really very problematic. So, in the name of equality, do women want to imitate men? They want to ape their practices, they want to ape their all habits and all the activities and processes. Numerous feminists advise against imitating male conduct, stressing the significance of finding fulfillment within one's own identity as a woman. They stress upon a separate identity of women. They ask that why should women ape or imitate men, why they should copy them. They have their own identity and they should pursue their own path as per their own needs, aspiration, talents, and as per their own position in society. So, there is no need for imitating them. So, this is also a very important and valuable argument in favor of the difference principle. Now, the theorization can be seen, that is the theorization of the difference debate can be seen in the thinkers like Kate Millett, who saw the masculine feminine distinction as part of patriarchal exploitation. To large extent, the differences by these theories were viewed as social artifacts constructed to keep women within certain rules. However, these theories were also critiqued by others such as Shulamit Firestone, who in arguing for androgynous equality wanted to eliminate the political uses of difference. So, you can see that there are so many shades within feminism when they are talking about the difference principle, and therefore, they argue that we can go for androgynous equality, where we are giving importance to both masculine and feminine traits. So, we are not making a strict division or partition between them, but we are emphasizing upon the importance of both these qualities. So, therefore, what we can see here is that the equality versus difference debate has opened up various questions, various issues regards what should be the right process or methods by which the emancipation of women can take place. And we have seen that how this has been a dilemma amongst the various feminist thinkers across the world. And the dilemma has been that whether the women should strive for equality because they need equality, because this is the primary concern or primary objective of feminism, and they cannot abandon the equality objective, or they cannot abandon the equality as their objective or goal of movement. But at the same time, if they are harping upon equality to a large extent, then there is an issue that the uniqueness or the distinctiveness of women is lost. So, the question is whether is there any necessity for the woman to completely imitate the men's life and practices, or there is something unique called women's style, or you can say the feminine qualities. And especially in the field of leadership, we find that all these type of questions are raised, where it is asked that is there any special form of women leadership or feminine leadership which is different from men. So, we can say that these are the dilemmas which we find inherent in these debates when we are talking about with respect to emancipation of women. And we have also seen that how within the liberal tradition the emphasis has been rightly given on the notion of equality, and how this notion has helped in garnering so many important civil and political rights for women across the world. We are aware that in the Western countries, various movements which were aimed at gaining political rights for women been successful in garnering various rights for women, and they have been inscribed in the constitution. Even few years back also, there were some countries who did not give the political rights to the women did not had the right to vote. So, it is after a long struggle that these rights were given. So, definitely the importance of equality principle is very much significant for the feminist movement or for the feminist concerns and issues, and it cannot be undermined or it cannot be neglected. So, equality aspect is very much important, because it is because of these emphasis on the equality principle that today women are getting equal pay with respect to the same work done by men, and various other important equal rights have been prescribed by the state and the constitution in various countries. Especially I would like to talk about the right to property, which has been enshrined in the Constitution of India also by passing laws. Now the women also have the right to property just like men. So, these are some of the important achievements because of the emphasis on the equality principle. When the Marxists are talking about connecting the question of inequality with the notion of class, then we have to understand that in some respect that perspective is also useful for understanding the equality problematic, because if you are talking about equality, then we have to understand that there are some women who belong to a class who are not enjoying equal position vis-a-vis the other dominant class. So, of course, the class, and we have already studied the importance of intersectionality. So, when we are studying the equality principle also, or when we are studying the problem of inequality of women, then naturally the notion of class can help us in understanding the multifarious forms in which inequality is practiced in terms of the positions in the class. Then in terms of the radical feminist, we have seen that the concept of equality and difference, they both have held very important role. And at first the radical feminism, they encompassed certain egalitarian ideas, but later on also talked about androgyny, which stemmed from a particular type of the radical egalitarianism, sometimes rooted in the advancement in biological technology. So, the subsequent dismissal of androgyny, it resulted in a skeptical stance towards equality, both as a principle and as a goal in politics. So, we see that even the radical feminists are hovering between the equality and difference principle. And also this, the equality principle could help in highlight the gaps in the various social, economic and political indicators or the development indicators across the world, which has been termed as the gender gap, and that has helped us in understanding and also quantifying the position of women vis-a-vis men in terms of health or in terms of education, in terms of their participation in politics and so on. And also we have seen that how the divergent perspectives on equality have created so much of rifts within feminism. On the one hand, the liberal feminists, they have argued for the equality of women at the same terms with men. Socialist feminists, they have argued for social and economic parity, and they have tackled some of the very important issues such as wealth distribution and wage gaps, because we know that even in the present times across the world, there are places and there are sectors across the countries where the women are not getting equal pay like men. And this is a problem not only in the developing countries, even in some of the western countries also we find the discrimination in terms of wage gap. And also if you see the wealth distribution, then we find that it is highly unequal and it is squeezed against women. The women are having very less access or control over the resources, or you can say over the property. So, the socialist feminists have played a very important role over highlighting these economic and social issues over which the liberals have not given much attention. And similarly, if you see the contribution of the radical feminists, then they have concentrated on various issues and also on the root causes of oppression and how that has created the problems for women in the society. So, they have asked for equality within the realms of family and personal life, like they have talked about the child care facilities, that it should be shared equally by both men and women. Then they have talked about sharing the domestic duties equally by both men and women, and also various other rights about which they have talked in terms of equality. Besides that, I have talked about the egalitarian perspective. They have asked for questioning the various patriarchal practices which have led to the formulation of so many gender biased practices and oppressive institutions in the society. Now, there have been numerous feminists we have discussed who have given importance to difference, principle over equality, and we have also seen that why they are important, because some of the thinkers like Kate Millett, who see that the masculine feminine distinction are a part of patriarchal exploitation. So, these distinctions are manufactured so that the women are subdued and kept under control by the men members of the society. So, therefore, again we have talked about Shulamit Firestone, who has argued for androgynous equality, wanted to eliminate the political uses of difference. So, if we emphasize upon androgynous equality, then the question of political uses of difference will automatically disappear. So, at the end of this lecture, I come to some of the activity questions about which I hope that you will be able to answer, because these have been discussed in detail in today's lecture. The first is, what do you understand by equality difference debate? Here we have explained in our lecture the meaning of equality principle, then what is the meaning of difference principle, then what are the various debates, what are the advantages and disadvantages if you side with the equality or difference principle. All these have been discussed in detail. Then the second is, explain liberal feminist views on equality of women. How the liberal feminists have argued for and struggled for the equal rights of women. We have also discussed this in some detail. So, with this I come to the end of this lecture, and in the next lecture we will continue with the equality difference debate, where we will discuss some more issues and some more problematics and debates which are associated with the equality difference principle. Hope you have liked this lecture. Thank you very much.